Welcome back, Dreadheads, to the Walking Dread podcast, your daily dose of addictive horror stories, nightmares, and terrifying tales. I'm Adrian, your host, for this chilling journey into the unknown. And with me is Julia, our expert guide to unraveling the darkest corners of the macabre.
Delighted to be here, Adrian. Listeners, brace yourselves because tonight we're taking on Sherlock Holmes, but not the one you're used to. We're diving into a story where even the great detective's logic is pushed to the breaking point.
That's right. We're talking about Holmes's Celeste case, the one that left him shaken to his very core, the Hound of the Baskervilles. But this isn't just a spooky hound in the fog. This is where the legend takes a terrifying turn. Okay, so we're starting in a classic setting. Baskerville Moor, desolate, shrouded in mist, already famous for the legend of a spectral hound. What I find fascinating is how even Holmes, the master of reason, feels uneasy there.
It's more than just the atmosphere, isn't it? The sources describe Holmes as feeling almost out of his depth. Like his usual tools of logic aren't enough. It's as if the moor itself challenges his entire worldview.
And as he starts investigating, it's not just footprints he finds, right? There are signs of something otherworldly, withered grass, a sulfurous smell. These aren't your everyday clues.
Exactly. It's like the moor is bleeding into our reality. And that ties into something really intriguing in the sources. Holmes's research into ancient grimoires, he finds mentions of gateways, thin spots, where our world and something else, something infernal can collide.
Wait, hold on. Infernal. Are we talking literal hell here?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? What defines infernal? The sources don't give us a clear definition, which I think adds to the mystery, but it definitely points to something beyond human comprehension, something ancient and powerful.
And this is where the Baskerville curse goes beyond just a local legend. Holmes starts to suspect that it's not just a hound haunting the moor, but something guarding a rift between worlds. He's stumbled onto a much bigger and much more terrifying secret.
Right, and think about this. The hound itself, it appears eyes like pits of fire and lunges at Watson, but then it can't fully cross over. It's like something's holding it back.
That's where the idea of the ward comes in, right? This protective circle around the moor. But initially I thought, okay, ward, that's
Right.
good, right? Protection. But then things get really creepy.
Because it's not just keeping something out, it's keeping something in. Whatever's trapped beneath the moor is far older and more powerful than the hound itself. And Holmes, by investigating, has inadvertently started to weaken that barrier.
So they're not just dealing with a haunted moor, they're dealing with a prison break.
Yeah.
And the warden is a spectral hound.
Precisely. The sources make it clear that the hound isn't the main threat. It's more like a symptom of a much deeper and much more unsettling problem.
And things escalate quickly.
Right.
They try to reinforce the ward at Baskerville Hall, but it's not enough. Something else starts rising from beneath the moor.
You can feel the tension building in the sources. The ground trembles, the air is thick with brimstone, and then a clawed hand, inhumanly large, shatters their defenses. This is way beyond anything they expected.
Baskerville Hall, once a symbol of safety, becomes their cage.
And they're trapped for days. The sources describe the constant pressure, the feeling of being hunted by something they can't even comprehend. It's a psychological torment as much as a physical one.
Okay, so we've got this terrifying siege. Holmes and Watson trapped. Where do they go from here? How do they even begin to fight back against something they can't understand?
That's where Holmes's brilliance, even under unimaginable pressure, comes into play. He makes a chilling realization about the Baskervilles themselves. They weren't cursed, they were...
There's jailers, holding back this ancient evil. What a horrifying family secret.
It reframes the entire legend, doesn't it? For generations, the Baskervilles weren't victims, they were guardians tasked with containing this threat.
And now Holmes and Watson are caught in the middle of it.
Faced with a choice, try to escape or become the new jailers.
Welcome back to the Walking Dread podcast, Dreadheads.
Yeah.
We lift off with Holmes and Watson trapped in Baskerville Hall, facing an unimaginable horror they unknowingly unleashed. It's a fight for survival, but also a struggle to make sense of the truly illogical.
And that's what makes this story so compelling. We see Holmes, the champion of reason, confronting something that defies all his deductions. He can't simply solve this case. He has to survive it.
So they're besieged in Baskerville Hall, surrounded by these creatures. What's their next move? Do they just wait it out and hope for the best?
Hope seems pretty thin at this point, but the sources describe a fascinating detail. The creatures can't fully enter our world. They're drawn to the hound to its energy, but the ward, even weakened, still holds some power.
So it's almost like they're stuck between worlds, trapped on the threshold, unable to fully cross over.
Exactly. And Holmes, ever the strategist, sees this as an opportunity. He realizes that if they can somehow neutralize the hound, weaken its connection to that other realm, they might have a chance to escape.
Hang on, neutralize the hound. We're talking about a creature from potentially hell.
Yeah.
How do you even begin to fight something like that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? But Holmes digs deeper into his research into those ancient grimoires, and he finds something, a binding sigil, an inscription that can disrupt the hound's connection to its infernal source.
Okay, so it's not just brute force. It's about using knowledge, about understanding the rules of this otherworldly game they're caught in.
And remember, they're trapped either way. Doing nothing guarantees their doom. This is a desperate gamble, but it's their only shot.
So they have this sigil, this potential weapon. How do they get close enough to the hound to use it? It's not like it's going to just sit there and wait to be tagged.
That's where Watson's courage comes into play. He creates a diversion, setting a fire in another part of the hall, drawing the creature's attention, while Holmes prepares for his confrontation with the hound.
This is it then, the showdown. What happens? Does Holmes manage to hit the hound with this sigil?
The hound, sensing the chaos and drawn by the fire, bursts through a weakened section of walla. But just as it enters, Holmes is ready. He hurls the sigil and it strikes the hound's chest.
Direct hit. What happens? Does it work? Give us all the spooky details.
The effect is immediate. The hound recoils the flames and its eyes flicker, its form wavers. It's clearly weakened, but not defeated. It's enraged, injured, and now fully inside the hall.
Oh man, that's way too close for comfort. So now they have an injured, enraged hellhound on their hands. What do?
But here's the thing, being fully inside the hall means the hound is further from its source of power, further from the gateway. And that's when something truly unsettling happens. The siege outside stops.
Wait, what? Just like that?
Everything goes quiet.
The other creatures, sensing the hound's weakened state, withdraw. Their connection to our world, it seems, is also tied to the hound. It's an eerie silence that descends more unsettling than the chaos that came before.
Okay, so it worked. They disrupted the connection, repelled the invasion.
Not quite a victory, more like a reprieve. The hound, weakened but still dangerous, is disoriented. It's their chance. Holmes and Watson using the cover of the fire escape through a hidden passage. They leave the hound trapped within the burning hall.
A daring escape.
What?
But I have to ask, what about the hound? What happened to it? That's where the story gets even more unsettling. No trace of the hound was ever found. Some speculate it was consumed by the fire, its essence banished back to the infernal realm. Others whisper that it still lurks somewhere within the ruins of Baskerville Hall, waiting for the right moment to return.
Okay, now that's creepy. But even though they escaped, they saw things, experienced things that would break most people. How do they even begin to process that?
That's the question that lingers, isn't it? They're physically safe, but what about the psychological cost? How you return to normal after staring into the abyss?
And how does this experience change their understanding of the world, of the thin veil that separates us from whatever lurks on the other side?
We'll delve into that unsettling aftermath and the enduring legacy of their encounter with the infernal right after this.
Welcome back, Dreadheads, to the Walking Dread podcast.
Yeah.
We left off with Holmes and Watson escaping that terrifying siege at Baskerville Hall. But their ordeal wasn't over. They might have escaped the hound, but did they escape the knowledge, the trauma of what they experienced?
That's the question that haunts this final chapter, isn't it? The sources describe them returning to London, but they're changed men. The shadows of Baskerville Moor cling to them. Imagine trying to return to your normal life, your normal cases after seeing that.
Yeah, it's like trying to forget a nightmare, except this one was all too real. Do they ever try to talk about it and make sense of what they saw?
Watson, ever the chronicler, attempts to write about it. He tries to document the events, the hound, the creatures, but his accounts are dismissed, seen as the ramblings of a man pushed too far.
Of course. Who would believe a story about gateways to hell and ancient evils? It's just too far beyond what people are willing to accept.
And Holmes, the master of deduction, the man of logic, he retreats further into himself, never speaks of Baskerville Moor again. But the sources say those close to him see the change. The spark is gone, replaced by a haunted look, a constant vigilance.
So they live with this secret, this knowledge that the world is far more fragile than anyone knows. It must have been a heavy burden to bear, knowing what lurks beneath the surface.
A burden and a responsibility. Because they can't just ignore it, can they? Knowing what they know, they can't simply sit back and pretend it never happened.
That's what I find so compelling about this ending. They don't become superheroes, they don't go on a monster hunting spree, but they also don't just give up.
Exactly. They become watchmen. They continue researching ancient lore, studying those forgotten texts, always searching for ways to strengthen the barriers between our world and the infernal.
So even in their silence, they're fighting back, preparing for the possibility that it could happen again, that somewhere another thin spot might open.
And in their Baker Street lodgings, there's a constant reminder. A circle of salt meticulously maintained the fireplace always burning with an unnatural heat. subtle wards against the darkness.
Chilling, isn't it? They might have escaped Baskerville more, but they never truly escaped the knowledge, the fear, that hell is only a crack away.
And it leaves us with a final unsettling question. What other thin spots might exist in our world? What other horrors might be lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for their chance to break through?
It's a thought that stays with you long after the story is over. And that's what makes this episode of the Walking Dread podcast so fascinating. It's not just about a spooky hound, it's about the limits of our understanding, the fragility of the world we think we know. So Dreadheads, keep those lights on tonight, and maybe check your soul circles. Until next time, stay spooky, and don't forget to rate and follow the Walking Dread podcast for more addictive horror stories. Sweet dreams.